The silence came without warning. One moment, the colony of New Carthage was sending its usual daily reports, weather updates, crop yields, children's school projects beamed back to Earth for proud grandparents to watch. The next, nothing. Just static. At first, no one panicked. Communications across 10 light-years were never perfect. Solar flares, cosmic dust, glitches in the deep space relay network, these things happened. The United Earth Directorate, UED, the global government formed after the resource wars of the late 21st century, logged the outage as routine signal loss, Epsilon Eridani colony. Standard procedure called for a wait-and-see approach. Give it a week. Maybe 2, but 2 weeks passed. Then a month, no signal. No emergency beacon. No reply to repeated hails on every frequency. That was not normal. On Earth, people barely noticed at first. Life moved fast. Cities floated on oceans. Farms grew in vertical towers, and most citizens had never even met someone who lived off-world. New Carthage was a dot in the sky. A hopeful experiment started 30 years earlier by scientists and dreamers. Only about 12,000 people lived there. Farmers, engineers, teachers. A few families who wanted to build something new under alien stars. But for those who had loved ones there, the silence was unbearable. In Geneva, at UED headquarters, a young analyst named Mira Chen sat hunched over her console, replaying the last transmission from New Carthage. It was a simple message from Governor Elias Rowe. Harvest season looks strong. The wheat fields are golden. Tell my granddaughter I fixed her toy rover, it runs again. The video showed blue skies, red soil, and rows of green crops stretching toward low, rocky hills, peaceful, ordinary, human. Mira's younger brother, Leo, had moved to New Carthage 5 years ago to work as a hydroponics technician. He sent her messages every week, funny stories about colony cats, complaints about recycled water tasting like metal, dreams of starting a bakery. His last message arrived on schedule, then nothing. She begged her superiors to send a probe. They refused. Resources are tight, they said. We can't launch a deep-range mission over a comms glitch. But Mira didn't give up. She gathered data, traffic logs, power grid readings, atmospheric sensors, all showing a sudden total drop in activity on New Carthage. No lights at night. No heat signatures from homes or factories. Even the colony's orbital weather satellites had gone dark. Finally, after 6 weeks of silence, the UED agreed to redirect an aging deep space probe, the Odyssey 7Un, which was already near the edge of the system. It would take 3 months to reach Epsilon Eridani, and another 10 for its data to return. The wait was agony. When the first images finally arrived, they were grainy and cold. The Odyssey 7 had scanned the planet from high orbit. What it found made Mira's blood run cold. New Carthage was gone, not abandoned, not evacuated, gone. The main settlement was a blackened crater. Buildings were melted into glassy slag. The wheat fields were ash. The river that once ran through the valley was dry and cracked. Thermal scans showed no life, no animals, no plants, not even microbes in the soil. Radiation levels were high in certain zones, matching patterns of intense focused energy bursts, like weapons fire, but unlike anything human science had ever built. Worse, the probe found debris in orbit. Fragments of the colony's communication array twisted and scorched, and among the wreckage tiny traces of an unknown alloy, smooth, dark, and humming with residual energy. This was not an accident. Not a natural disaster. Someone or something had attacked. And they had done it with terrifying precision. Every human structure destroyed. Every person erased. No survivors. No warning. The UED held an emergency session. For the first time in decades, all 12 Planetary Council members agreed on one thing. This was an act of war. News spread fast. Within hours, Earth's networks exploded with fear and fury. "Aliens wiped out our colony," screamed headlines. 12,000 dead. Parents wept for children they'd sent to the stars. Veterans of the resource wars called for immediate retaliation. Conspiracy theorists claimed the UED had hidden warnings. Scientists argued over whether the attackers were even intelligent, or just a rogue machine, a cosmic predator. But one fact was clear. Humanity was not alone. And whatever was out there, it saw humans as a threat, or worse, as nothing at all. In Geneva, Mira stared at a photo of her brother Leo, smiling in front of his hydroponic greenhouse, holding a ripe tomato like a trophy. She didn't cry. She felt something colder, something harder. Across the planet, others felt it too. In the shipyards of Luna, workers paused on gantries looking up at Earth hanging in the black sky. In the asteroid mines of Ceres, miners turned off their drills and gathered in silence. In the floating cities of the Pacific, children asked their teachers, "Are we safe?" The answer, for the first time in human history, was no. The UED convened its war council. Admiral Lin Zhao, a veteran of the Martian border conflicts and one of the few leaders respected across all Earth factions, stood before the council. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp with grief. Her niece had been a schoolteacher on New Carthage. "We do not know who did this," she said. "But we know what they did. They erased a human world. They killed 12,000 innocent people. If we do nothing, they will think we are weak. They will come again." She didn't call for peace talks. She didn't suggest sending another probe. She spoke one word, and it echoed through every chamber of power on Earth. Retribution. The next day, the UED activated Emergency Protocol Omega, the highest level of military mobilization. All non-essential space projects were canceled. Civilian factories switched to war production. Food rations were adjusted to feed shipbuilders, not consumers. Schools taught engineering and tactics instead of art and history. The goal was simple: build a fleet so large, so powerful, that no enemy would ever dare attack humanity again. They called it Project Retribution. No one knew how many ships would be needed, but early estimates suggested a number so vast it seemed impossible: 700,000 warships. Critics called it madness. "We don't even have 7,000 ships total," shouted a senator from Jakarta. "This will bankrupt Earth." But the public demanded action. Grief turned to rage. Memorials for New Carthage filled city squares. Candles, photos, silent vigils that turned into marches. "Justice for New Carthage" became the rallying cry. And so, Earth began to change. In orbit, construction drones swarmed like insects around skeletal frames of new vessels. On the moon, entire mountains were hollowed out to build engine cores. In the asteroid belt, miners worked double shifts to extract iron, nickel, and rare metals. Every nation, every corporation, every citizen was asked to sacrifice. Children collected scrap metal. Artists designed ship insignias. Retired engineers came back to work. Even criminals were offered reduced sentences if they joined the shipyards. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about survival. If one colony could be wiped out in a single strike, what protected Earth? Mars, the Jovian stations? Humanity had spent centuries fighting itself. Now, for the first time, it faced a common enemy beyond the stars. Admiral Zhao visited the ruins of New Carthage in a simulation chamber, walking through ghostly recreations of streets she'd never seen but now knew by heart. She spoke to no one. But her orders were clear. Every ship must be ready. Every weapon tested. Every crew trained. "We will not be victims again," she told her officers. "We will be the storm." Back on Earth, Mira Chen joined the project, not as an analyst but as a communications officer for the fleet. She wore her brother's old colony badge on her uniform. She didn't speak much, but when she did, her voice was steady. "They took everything from us," she said once to a group of new recruits. "Now we take the stars back." The silence that had begun with New Carthage's last message was over. In its place rose the roar of engines, the clang of metal, the hum of a planet preparing for war. And far away, in the cold dark between stars, something waited. It did not know that Earth had heard. It did not know that humanity was coming, but it would soon find out. Earth changed fast after the silence of New Carthage. What began as grief turned into fire. People stopped asking why, and started demanding when. When would Earth strike back? When would justice come? The United Earth Directorate answered with action. Project Retribution was no longer just a plan. It became the heartbeat of the planet. Every city, every factory, every person had a role. The goal was clear: build 700,000 warships. Not for defense, not for show. For vengeance. At first, many thought it impossible. Earth had never built more than a few thousand ships in its entire spacefaring history. But fear and anger are powerful fuels. Within weeks, civilian shipyards in orbit around Earth, the Moon, and Mars were stripped down and rebuilt for war. Floating factories that once made solar panels or water recyclers now poured out hull plates, fusion cores, and missile racks. On the moon, entire craters became construction zones. Robots worked day and night, welding metal under the silent stars. Human workers lived in pressurized domes, breathing recycled air, eating protein paste and sleeping in shifts. They didn't complain. They believed they were saving humanity. In the asteroid belt, miners dug deeper than ever before. Iron, nickel, cobalt, everything was sent straight to the shipyards. Old mining stations became military outposts. Security drones patrolled the tunnels. Sabotage was punished by exile to the outer dark. No trial, no appeal. Back on Earth, life grew harder. Food became rationed. Energy was saved for ship production, not comfort. Lights dimmed in cities. Entertainment networks showed only news and patriotic messages. Children learned math by calculating missile trajectories. History lessons focused on past wars and how they were won. Not everyone agreed with this path. Some scientists, like Dr. Elias Rourke, warned that rushing into war without understanding the enemy was dangerous. What if they didn't mean to kill? He asked during a public hearing. What if it was a mistake? A misunderstanding? He was shouted down. 12,000 dead is not a mistake. Someone yelled from the crowd. Rourke was labeled a traitor by some, a fool by others, but he kept speaking quietly to anyone who would listen. The real power behind Project Retribution was Admiral Lin Zhao. She was not loud. She did not give fiery speeches, but her presence was like steel. She visited every major shipyard, walked every production line, spoke to engineers and welders alike. She remembered names. She asked about families, and she always ended with the same words. We do this so no one else suffers like New Carthage. Her niece had died there. A schoolteacher, 28 years old. Her classroom was now a crater. Zhao carried a small photo of her in her uniform pocket. She never showed it to anyone. Chancellor Anya Petrova, head of the UED, used the project to hold her fragile government together. Earth was still divided. Old rivalries between regions, cultures, and ideologies hadn't vanished overnight. But Petrova knew that fear united people faster than hope ever could. She approved every budget request for Project Retribution. She silenced critics with emergency powers. This is not a time for doubt, she declared. This is a time for strength. And so the fleet grew. The first ships were small. Scout drones, missile boats, supply tugs. Then came the larger ones. Destroyers with railguns that could punch through asteroid rock. Carriers that held thousands of fighter drones. Command ships with shielded bridges and AI war rooms. Most ships were not meant to be crewed by humans. Too many lives would be lost in battle. Instead, they were run by artificial minds, smart, fast, and loyal. Human crews would only serve on the largest flagships where judgment and courage mattered more than speed. Training began early. Young men and women from every continent volunteered. They trained in zero-gravity simulators, practiced damage control in flooded modules, and learned to fire weapons that could level cities. They were told again and again, the enemy showed no mercy. We will show none. 15 years passed, 15 years of sacrifice, 15 years of silence from the stars. No new attacks came. No signals. No signs of the enemy. But Earth did not relax. It dug deeper. By year 10, over 200,000 ships were complete. By year 12, 500,000. The final ships, massive dreadnoughts with engines that burned hydrogen like fire, were finished in year 15. The last one, named New Carthage's Vengeance, rolled out of the Luna shipyard on a cold, quiet morning. It was done. 100,000 warships. They hung in space like a storm waiting to break. Some were no bigger than a bus. Others were kilometers long, dark and sharp, bristling with weapons. Together they formed the largest fighting force ever built by any species anywhere. People on Earth looked up at the night sky and saw nothing. But those in orbit saw the truth. The stars were hidden behind a wall of metal and fire. Admiral Zhao stood on the bridge of the Unity, the fleet's command ship. She reviewed the final logs. Every ship reported ready, every system green, every crew trained. The cost had been huge. Trillions of credits, millions of lives shaped by war. A planet that had forgotten how to dream of peace. But in her mind, there was no regret. Only duty. Dr. Rourke visited her one last time before launch. He was older now, his hair white, his voice softer. You still don't know why they did it, he said. We know they killed our people, Zhao replied. That is enough. But what if they are like us? He asked. What if they are afraid? What if they think we are the monsters? Zhu looked out the viewport at the endless fleet. Then they should have talked. Hot burned? Rourke nodded slowly. I hope you're right, Admiral. For all our sakes. He left without another word. Preparations for launch began. Fuel was loaded. Navigation paths were locked. Final messages were sent home. Letters, voice notes, last words to loved ones. Mira Chen, now a senior communications officer, recorded a short message to her parents. If I don't come back, she said, know that I did this for Leo and for Earth. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried in years. On the day of departure, every human in the solar system paused. Factories stopped. Schools fell silent. Even the floating cities on the oceans grew quiet. Billions watched on screens as the first wave of ships fired their engines. A deep, silent pulse of light spread across the sky. Not sound, but energy. The fleet began to move. One by one, then in waves, the 700,000 ships turned toward the stars. Their destination, Epsilon Eridani, the grave of New Carthage, and they believed the home of the enemy. The journey would take 12 years at top speed. Most of the crew would sleep in cryo chambers, dreaming of Earth or of battle. The ships would fly themselves, guided by AI, watched over by skeleton crews. Admiral Zhao chose to stay awake. She would not sleep while vengeance sailed. As the Unity left the orbit of Neptune, the last planet of the old solar system, Zhao looked back one final time. Earth was just a pale blue dot now, almost lost in the sun's glare. She whispered something no one else heard. Then she turned her chair forward toward the dark. Behind her, the fleet stretched for millions of kilometers, a river of steel and fire flowing into the unknown. On Earth, people cheered. They believed justice was on its way. They believed the enemy would pay. But out in the void, where no human had ever gone before, no one knew what waited. The aliens, called the Velen by the few scientists who studied the debris, had not sent another signal. They had not moved. They had not prepared, or so it seemed. In truth, they were watching. Not with eyes, but with sensors woven into the fabric of space itself. They had seen the swarm of metal leave the Sol system. They did not understand its purpose. To them, humans were a mystery, a species that spread like a virus, then returned with weapons. The Velen did not think in terms of war or peace. They thought in terms of survival. And if this new swarm threatened their young, they would act again, but that was far ahead. For now, the only sound in the galaxy was the hum of 700,000 engines, burning bright, carrying the weight of human grief across the stars, and Earth, silent once more, waited for the storm to return. The fleet moved through the dark like a ghost army. 700,000 ships stretching across space like a metal storm, left the solar system behind and sailed into the endless night between stars. Their engines burned steady and bright, pushing them forward at 1/3 the speed of light. It was fast, faster than anything humans had ever built, but space was still too big, too empty, too patient. 12 years. That's how long the journey would take to reach Epsilon Eridani. 12 years of silence, cold and waiting. Most of the crew slept. They lay in cryo chambers, bodies frozen, minds quiet. Only a small number stayed awake. Officers, engineers, medics, rotating in shifts to watch over the fleet. Admiral Lin Zhao was one of them. She refused to sleep. I will see every light year we cross, she said. I owe that to the dead. Life aboard the command ship Unity was hard. Air tasted stale. Food came in tubes. Sleep was short and restless. The ship was built for war, not comfort. Every sound echoed. Metal groaning, pumps humming, alarms beeping softly in the distance. Outside the viewports, there was nothing. Just black. Stars didn't twinkle out here. They were sharp, cold points of light, unmoving, uncaring. At first, morale was high. The crew believed in their mission. They spoke of justice, of making the enemy pay. They played old Earth music, told stories of home, and marked the days on shared calendars. But as the years passed, doubt crept in. Year 3. A reactor on Ship 44-218 overheated. The crew tried to fix it, but the damage spread. The ship exploded, taking 127 lives. No one had died in battle yet, but space itself was killing them. Year 5. A supply ship ran low on oxygen due to a faulty seal. Rations were cut across 3 sectors. Fights broke out over extra protein bars. Discipline held, but barely. Year 7, a young officer named Jalen went mad. He claimed the enemy was already inside the fleet, whispering through the comms. He tried to sabotage a drone bay. Admiral Zhao ordered him placed in isolation. He died there, alone, still whispering. The fleet was not just metal, it was human. And humans break under silence. Admiral Zhao walked the halls every day. She spoke to her people. She listened. She punished when needed, comforted when possible. But even she felt the weight. Some nights she stood at the main viewport staring into the dark, wondering if they were chasing ghosts. Then, in year 9, something changed. A deep-range scanner picked up a signal, not from Epsilon Eridani but from a dead zone near Zeta Reticuli, a star system off their path. The signal was faint, strange, repeating in a pattern no human language matched. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Dr. Elias Rourke, now old but still serving as the fleet's chief xenolinguist, was called to analyze it. He had boarded the Unity before launch, one of the few civilians allowed. Most thought he was a fool for coming, but Zhao respected his mind. For weeks Rourke worked in his lab, feeding the signal into translation AIs, comparing it to every known sound, math sequence, and natural rhythm. Then one morning he called Zhao, I think. I understand part of it, he said, voice shaking. He played the sound. It was soft, almost musical. Then his AI overlaid images, simple shapes, then complex ones. A circle, a spiral, a dying star, a swarm of small lights moving together. It's not a message of war, Rourke said. It's a warning. And a story. He explained. The signal showed a species, call them the Velen, who traveled in swarms, not cities. They lived in giant organic ships that grew like trees. They did not mine planets. They did not build weapons like humans. But they protected their young fiercely. The signal showed something else. A small blue-green world being covered in strange green patches. Microbes spreading. Then the Velen ships arriving. Then, fire. The green patches, Rourke whispered, match the terraforming bacteria we sent to New Carthage. Zhao went very still. You're saying our own microbes killed their children? Rourke nodded. They didn't see humans. They saw a plague. They acted to stop it. To them it wasn't murder, it was cleaning. The room felt colder. Zhao asked for proof. Rourke showed her data, genetic matches between New Carthage's soil samples and the alien signal's plague images. The timeline fit. The Velen had struck within days of the colony's first major crop bloom, the moment the microbes spread into the air. It wasn't an invasion. It was a quarantine. The truth hit like a hammer. For 9 years, 700,000 ships had sailed toward vengeance, but the enemy had not been evil. They had been afraid, like humans would be if an alien disease landed on Earth. Zhao called a private council. She showed them Rourke's findings. Some officers refused to believe it. It's a trick, shouted Captain Voss. They're trying to weaken our will. But others looked at the data and felt sick. What do we do now? Asked Mira Chen, her voice quiet. Zhao didn't answer right away. She looked at the photo of her niece still in her pocket, worn at the edges. She thought of 12,000 graves under alien soil. She thought of the cost. The lives lost building this fleet. The planet that had forgotten joy. But she also thought of justice. True justice wasn't blind rage. It was truth. We keep going, she said finally. But we go with open eyes. Not just to destroy, but to understand. Not everyone agreed. A group of hardline captains, led by the fiery Commander Dax, began to whisper in the lower decks. The Admiral has gone soft, they said. She listens to old men and alien songs. We were sent to kill, not talk. They started preparing their ships for full combat mode, arming weapons, disabling peace protocols, sharing secret codes. Zhao heard the rumors. She increased patrols. She reminded everyone of their oath, to protect humanity, not just its pride. But the fleet was too big. Too many minds. Too much fear. In year 11, as they neared the edge of Velen space, the first act of betrayal happened. A drone carrier, Ship 6-12005, fired a test missile, not at a target, but toward a known Velen sensor buoy. The missile was destroyed by automated defenses, but the message was clear. Some humans wanted war, no matter the truth. Zhao called Dax to the bridge. "Stand down," she ordered. Dax refused. "The enemy killed our people. Truth or not, they must burn." "You will obey," Zhao said, hand near her sidearm. For a long moment they stared at each other. Then Dax turned and left without a word. But his eyes said everything. The fleet sailed on. Now it carried not just weapons, but division. In year 12 they arrived. The Zeta Reticuli system was not what they expected. No planets, no cities. Just a dim red star and a cloud of strange, drifting shapes near its outer edge, like giant seeds or nests, glowing faintly with internal light. The Veln swarm. Scanners showed movement inside. Life signs. Thousands of them. Young ones, the data suggested, protected. The fleet stopped at the edge of the system. Silence returned. Admiral Zhao stood on the bridge, hands behind her back. Behind her, 700,000 ships waited. Ahead, the enemy, now not monsters but parents. She opened a fleet-wide channel. "We came for blood," she said, voice calm but heavy. "But we found a mirror. They lost children too. Not to war, but to fear. Just like us." She paused. "I will not order an attack. Not today. We will try to speak. If they fire first, we defend. But we do not start this war again." A murmur ran through the fleet. Some cheered softly. Others cursed. Then, from the rear of the formation, weapons powered up. Commander Dax had made his choice. His ship, the Iron Will, turned its main cannons toward the nearest Veln nest. "Enough talk," he broadcast. "For New Carthage!" And he fired. The shot from the Iron Will lit up the dark like a second sun. A beam of white-hot plasma tore through space and struck the nearest Veln nest, a soft, glowing structure the size of a small moon. The impact did not explode like a bomb. Instead, the nest shuddered, then began to blacken as if burning from the inside. For a moment, nothing else moved. The Veln did not fire back. They did not flee. They simply reacted. From the wounded nest, thousands of small shapes poured out like seeds on the wind, but alive. They swirled in silence, forming patterns, pulsing with soft blue light. It was not an attack. It was a cry, but Commander Dax saw only weakness. "They're defenseless," he shouted over the fleet channel. "Finish them." More ships powered up their weapons. Not all, only those loyal to Dax, about 200 vessels. They broke formation, aiming at the swarm. Admiral Zhao acted fast. "All loyal ships, shield the Veln. Block line of fire." The Unity and hundreds of others moved like a wall of steel between the attackers and the alien swarm. Railgun rounds and plasma bolts flew. But now human ships fired on human ships. Space turned into chaos. Explosions bloomed in the void. Silent, bright, deadly. A drone carrier took a hit and spun out of control, its cargo of fighters scattering like sparks. A medical frigate was caught in crossfire and vanished in a flash of light. Screams filled comms channels, then cut off as ships died. Mira Chen worked the communications deck, her hands shaking but steady. She rerouted signals, warned friendly ships, tried to keep order. "This is madness," she yelled into the mic. "We're killing each other." On the bridge, Zhao watched the battle unfold on her screen. Her face was hard, but her eyes were sad. She had hoped to avoid this. But Dax had forced her hand. "Target the Iron Will," she ordered. "Disable, not destroy." The Unity's weapons locked on. A warning shot flew past Dax's ship. He ignored it. Then came the Veln. They did not use guns or missiles. Instead, they sent out waves, ripples of energy that moved through space like sound through water. Where the waves touched human ships, lights flickered. Engines stalled. Computers froze. It was not an attack meant to kill. It was meant to stop. The Veln were shutting them down. Dax's ship lost power. It drifted, dark and silent. Other rebel ships suffered the same fate. Only the loyalist vessels, shielded by Zhao's orders to run on hardened backup systems, stayed online. In the sudden quiet, a new signal came through. Not words. Not sounds, but images. Dr. Rourke rushed to his station. "It's them. They're talking." The screen showed a vision, a Veln youngling, small and soft, floating in a nursery pod. Then green spots appeared on its skin, Earth's microbes. It grew weak, it died. The image shifted to New Carthage. Humans coughing, falling, buried under red soil. Then a single question formed in light. Why? Rourke gasped. They're asking why we brought the plague. And why we came back with fire. Zhao stood up. Open all channels. Full broadcast. She stepped to the main comm unit. She did not wear her uniform jacket. Her hair was loose. She looked tired, human. My name is Admiral Lin Zhao of Earth, she said, voice clear and calm. We came here for revenge. We thought you were monsters who killed our people without reason. She paused. We were wrong. She told them about New Carthage, about the 12,000 dead. But she also told them about the microbes, about fear, about mistakes. We did not know your children were dying too, she said. We only saw our pain. But pain is not a reason to spread more pain. Then she turned to her own fleet. To my people, we were sent to protect humanity, not to become the very thing we feared. If we destroy them now, we are no better than the silence that took New Carthage. Silence followed. Even Dax's ship stayed dark. Then from the Velen swarm, a single small vessel moved forward. It was smooth, organic, shaped like a teardrop. It stopped a few kilometers from the Unity. A hatch opened. No weapons. No soldiers. Just light, Rourke whispered. They want to talk. Face to face, Zhao nodded. Prepare a shuttle. I'll go, her officers protested. It's too dangerous. If we do not trust them now, she said, then this war never ends. She took only Rourke and Mira with her. The shuttle crossed the distance slowly. Inside, no one spoke. Mira held her brother's old colony badge in her hand. Rourke checked his translation device one last time. Zhao stared ahead, heart pounding but face calm. The Velen ship welcomed them without sound. The air inside was warm, smelling faintly of rain and earth. The walls pulsed gently like breathing. In the center of the chamber stood a Velen. It was tall, thin, with skin like polished stone and eyes that held galaxies. It made no sound, but images formed in their minds, shared thoughts, not words. It showed them its name. Kale. A guardian. A parent. Kyle showed them the truth again, how the green plague had spread from New Carthage's winds into their migration path. How their young had sickened within days. How they had acted in panic, not hate. Then Kale asked, will you bring more plague? Will you burn our nests again? Zhao shook her head. No, we will help you heal. And we will never send life to your space without asking first. She offered something no human had ever offered an alien before. Help. Medical data on the microbes. Filters to clean their nurseries. A promise to stay away unless invited. Kale was silent for a long time. Then a new image formed. 2 hands, 1 human, 1 Velen, touching gently. It was not forgiveness. Not yet, but it was a start. Back on the Unity, Zhao ordered the fleet to stand down. All weapons powered off, all ships to hold position. She addressed the entire armada. The mission of vengeance is over, she said. From this moment, we are here to make peace. Not everyone agreed. Some ships refused orders. They powered up and turned toward Earth, muttering about betrayal. Others stayed, ashamed or hopeful. But the war, both against the Velen and within humanity, was done. The loyal ships formed a protective ring around the Velen swarm. Engineers began building filters from spare parts. Medics shared data. Rourke and Kale worked day and night, building a true language between species. Mira stood at a viewport watching the Velen younglings glow softly in their repaired nests. She thought of Leo. She whispered, I'm sorry it took so long. Months passed. The fleet did not leave. It became a bridge, not a weapon. And far away, back on Earth, no one knew what had happened. They still waited for news of victory. They still believed their 700,000 ships were bringing fire to the stars. But out here, in the quiet dark, something new was growing. Not war, not even peace, but understanding. And that, Zhao knew, was harder and more precious than any vengeance. The fleet did not return to Earth as heroes. It returned as ghosts. After 2 years of working with the Velen, Admiral Lin Zhao gave the order to go home. The 700,000 ships that had left Earth in fire now turned back in silence. Many were damaged. Some were empty, lost in the civil fight or given to the Velen as peace gifts. Only about 520,000 made the long journey back. News of what happened spread slowly. At first, Earth heard only fragments. Fleet turned back. No battle fought. Admiral Zhao made contact. People did not understand. They had waited 12 years for justice. Now they were told there would be no revenge. Anger came fast. When the first ships entered the solar system, they were met not with cheers but with protests. Crowds gathered in every major city, Geneva, New Mumbai, Pacifica, holding signs that read "Traitors" and "Justice for New Carthage." Families of the dead wept in the streets, feeling betrayed. How could Zhao spare the monsters who killed their children? Chancellor Anya Petrova, who had built her power on the promise of vengeance, saw her support vanish overnight. She called Zhao a coward. She demanded a trial. But the truth was too big for lies to hold. When full records were released, images of the Velen younglings, data on the microbes, logs of the civil battle, many people fell silent. Not all. Some never accepted it. They said Zhao had been tricked, that the Velen were playing her. That peace was weakness, but others began to see. Mira Chen walked through the arrival bay on Luna, her uniform worn, her eyes tired. Reporters shouted questions at her.
"Do you regret not fighting?"
one asked. She looked at them, then at the photo of her brother Leo she still carried. "I wanted them to burn," she said quietly. But burning them wouldn't bring him back. It would only make more graves. Her words spread. Slowly, the mood began to shift. Back on Earth, schools started teaching a new lesson. That fear can look like evil, but isn't always. That sometimes the bravest thing is not to strike, but to stop. The UED collapsed within a year. Too many lies, too much pain. In its place, a new council formed. One that included scientists, doctors, even former colony builders. They called it the Concord of Earth. Its first law: no war without full understanding. Dr. Elias Rourke became its chief advisor on alien contact. Old and frail, he spent his last years building a true translation system with the Velen. He never saw Earth again. He died aboard a joint human-Velen science station, surrounded by both species. His last words were whispered in a language only the Velen understood. "Thank you for listening." Admiral Zhao did not take a new command. She refused all honors. She moved to a small habitat on the far side of the moon, where few people went. There she grew vegetables in a small greenhouse just like the ones on New Carthage. She spoke to no one for months, but sometimes children from Earth would send her messages. "Did you really meet an alien?" they asked. "Were they scary?" She always replied the same way. They were sad. Just like us, the 700,000 ships became a symbol, but not the one Earth expected. They were not a sign of power. They were a warning, a reminder of how fast grief can turn into fire, and how hard it is to put that fire out. Most of the fleet was dismantled. Metal was reused for hospitals, schools, clean water plants. A few ships were kept as museums. One, the Clarion, the science frigate that first made contact, was placed in orbit around Earth, open to all. Inside, visitors could hear the Velen signal, see the images, and read the words. "We came for blood. We found a mirror. Years passed, New Carthage was never rebuilt. But a memorial was placed in its orbit, a ring of light that pulsed once every hour like a heartbeat. Both humans and Velen added their own symbols to it. It became a place of quiet, not anger. The Velen did not come to Earth, they stayed in their part of space. But they sent gifts, seeds that grew in poisoned soil, songs that calmed storms, data that helped cure old diseases. In return, humans sent clean energy design, stories, and music. No weapons, no demands. It was not friendship, not yet. But it was respect. On Earth, life slowly returned to something like peace. People stopped looking to the stars with fear. They looked with curiosity. New colonies were planned, but only after long talks with scientists, with ethicists, with the Velen themselves. No more rushing. No more assuming Mira Chen never married. She never had children, but she taught. She traveled to schools across the planet, telling the story of New Carthage, not as a tragedy to be avenged, but as a lesson to be learned. "Vengeance is easy," she would say. "Understanding is hard, but only understanding saves us." Admiral Zhao lived to be 93. She never gave a speech, never wrote a book. But on the day she died, every ship in Earth's fleet, now small, peaceful, used for rescue and research, turned off its lights for 1 minute. Even the Velen dimmed their nests in the far system. In her greenhouse, her last tomato plant still bore fruit. Back on Earth, people argued, loved, built, and dreamed again. The scars of Project Retribution remained: empty factories, old soldiers with haunted eyes, songs about lost brothers and sisters. But the world did not forget, and in the night sky, when people looked up, they no longer saw enemies waiting in the dark. They saw neighbors, far away, quiet, and watching, just like them. The mission of vengeance had ended not with fire, but with a single choice to stop. And in that choice, humanity found something it had almost lost: its humanity.